Civilization VII's new continuity mode is here, with more changes than expected, helping to make the age transitions a little bit less abrupt. And surprisingly, Firaxis have also unveiled some extra paid and free content for Civ 7, most notably the new Right to Rule Civilizations and Leaders. So with time cards down below, let's check out the July update. We begin with the juiciest free changes of all, the age transitions. In their developer update, Firaxis highlighted these really in the biggest way of all. Most of the focus was on age abruptness. This comes in the form of a brand new default setting called Age Transition Impact. Here, the default now moves toward continuity. The attempt is that, well, you should be able to retain most of your empire and units at the age transition. Most of these things should stay the same, maybe even in the same position. Units will upgrade automatically and generally stay put. If they're inside of enemy territory, they'll just be bumped sort of just outside of that territory, and that's how Firaxis are choosing to get around that war side of things. Siege and scout units will now remain, and speaking of units, by the way, catapults and merchants will now be available at the very beginning of the exploration age. Independence will also spawn at the beginning of an age, and the building maintenance and its base yield will remain as you move through the ages. Alongside those fixed units and some sort of new availabilities, there's also this, crucially now, a fixed number of turns at the end of the age. It's called the end of age countdown. It will default to 10 turns. You can choose to turn it off or turn it up to 20. This will guarantee a fixed number of turns at the end of each age, so there won't be any nasty surprises as a civilization maybe rapidly moves through and adds progress to the ages. If you don't want to play with any of these settings, I imagine why, but maybe you like it the way it was, well, good news for you, there is also a default age transition impact setting called Regroup. This is essentially the way things used to be, more aggressive resets, so to speak. Before we move on to the new Civs and Leaders, there are some other changes that have rolled out in today's July 22nd patch update. The first one is all about diplomatic decay and relationship shifts. This is kind of leading into the age transition thing as well, right? It's meant to make your relationship with other leaders a little bit more gentle and predictable, a bit more gradual. The new setting will gradually pull you towards a neutral position over time, adjusting that age decay, lifting you up from hostile in this case, or of course, bringing you back down to neutral. Firaxis noted that because there tend to be more ways to wreck a relationship than improve it, the general decay will be more in your favor if you have a negative relationship. That is to say, the relationship will return to neutral faster than it will decay back down to neutral should you already be in a positive light. The next change, kind of related to this, but not really. It's still about the AI, but in this case it's about the advisors. The advisors, very annoying. Firaxis took feedback on them just like they took feedback on the auto explore function through their Discord. You might want to check that out if you're big on giving feedback. In this case, of course, advisors can be turned off, which is usually the way that I run them. If you don't, you should find that they are generally a little bit more useful now, a little bit less likely to advise you of things that have already happened. This one, fairly short and sweet. So let's move on to something a little bit more impactful, and it is yet again that auto explore feature. Now you can see what it looks like in the game. The auto explore feature, of course, much needed, much requested. And it doesn't just come to scouts. All ages and variants of scouts will get it. However, in the exploration age, tier 2 and 3 naval units can also auto-explore, and this kind of naval theme bleeds through into the modern age as well, where everything except the humble submarine can go about and auto-explore. It's a shame that we didn't get this on a few other units. I generally like to sometimes use this feature on military units that are standing around doing nothing. Nonetheless, it's nice to see it in the game. In the developer update, Firaxis said they wanted to give us time to play with the new features of the Scout, like finding discoveries, before implementing auto-explore. Not necessarily something I can get behind, but I can get behind the fact that it is in the game now. I think we should move on. Let's move on to free content, and then the paid DLC where the new leaders are hidden. The free content just has one piece. It's Trung Nhi, a new commander that will be available to you only if you're playing as the leader Trung Nhi. and we'll see a broader sort of Vietnamese theme, if you will, as we look at the other editions. You may remember this graphic from last week that introduced Trung Nhi, and also taught me that in the USA, the day that I'd always considered to be the weekend, Sunday, is in fact the week start. You crazy Fahrenheit feet lovers, you! Trung Nhi will have her own promotions tree, and we caught a brief glimpse of that here in the developer update, just one on the right-hand side, as well as, of course, her own unique aesthetic and being unique to that specific leader. Now let's talk Right to Rule, the paid DLC that was included in the Founders Edition, so if you pre-ordered that, you'll get it. Okay. And probably you'll be able to pick it up later on, right? Because these things, of course, always release separately as well. Here is the graphic that they've detailed, showing off new leaders and civs. Let's take a look at the first part releasing at the very same time as, actually at the time of recording for me, today's patch update. The new leader is Ghengis Khan, making its, not debut, of course, to Civilization. A much-loved leader across many Civ games is returning in Civilization 7. Next up, we have two civilizations. The first one is Assyria, and I imagine this is probably going to be a playable civ in the game's very first age, given the history behind this civilization. The second one, though, I suspect is probably going to be an exploration age civ. This is Dai Viet, leading into what I just mentioned before, in fact, about a greater focus on Southeast Asia, specifically Vietnam. Here you can see a sort of roughly 10th century Vietnamese monarchy being represented in the game, as well as four wonders down the bottom there. On the right-hand side of the graphic, not coming to Civilization 7 now, no, it's not coming until September, we have one new leader. Looks to me like kind of a queen consort Indian rebellion leading figure, likely therefore a modern age leader, and another one for the Indian subcontinent. Go you! You guys have got a lot of love in this game. The two new civilizations added this time around are quite neat. The first one here, as you can see, is the Qajar dynasty, perhaps a modern age one, looking, I'm not a historian on this topic at all, but looking at those dates, it looks like we're right on the cusp of Civilization 7's modern age with this Iranian civilization. And then as we move through, we see the first one that's not a part of Asia or the Middle East. Just kidding! It is in fact part of Asia, though this time a Korean kingdom, and also apparently a number of chairs. This looks to me like an Antiquity Age civilization, given we're starting in BCE, though it does stretch over a period of about 1,000 years for Silla, the Korean kingdom. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this pretty quick look at this DLC. Of course, these will be paid DLC collections, and that brings its own quantrums, right? It's kind of like the City Skylines 2 scenario. It reminds me of it a lot. You have this DLC that people have pre-ordered, and therefore they deserve it. But you have a game that needs a lot of love and a lot of fixing. I think Civilization 7 has broadly done a much better job of handling it and improving it than Cities 2 did, but that's probably a topic for another video. My point here is that this content is gratefully rolling out to people who already bought it, but maybe leaving a little bit of a sour taste in the mouths of those of you who haven't, right? That old, why are you releasing paid content when the base game hasn't been fixed yet? My hope is that we get to still see a bit of both, and that the significant changes, like we saw to age transitions this time around, continue. Finally, I'd just like to note that is something that Firaxis have said. They again stressed it in today's developer update that there's quote-unquote lots brewing behind the scenes, end quote, on age transition abruptness, and so much more. So, do stay tuned. I think we've got a lot more to discuss about Civilization 7 as we move through, but I feel like this is another fairly big step in the right direction for the game. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.